Hello, Seymour here. Welcome to this video. Please like and subscribe. So today I'm going to do my Formula 1 analysis and the results of the Grand Prix and driver ratings and stuff. So first of all, we've got Max Verstappen. Unfortunately, he retired from the race, but he was having a great weekend. He started second on the grid after the Lewis Hamilton penalty. What I personally don't think should have been a penalty, because he was half a second ahead anyway, and he mildly cut the corner. I mean, if it would have been close, I would have dropped him probably 5 places, but because he was so far ahead, apart from Bottas, of course, I wouldn't have given him the penalty. But he retired because of an electronics glitch in his system or something. I was really ashamed. I mean, he probably could have won that race, or at least come second. He could have challenged Valtteri Bottas, basically. Then I've got Daniel Ricciardo. He had he retired on lap 17 with an overheating issue. He started 10th on the grid. He was good all weekend, and I thought he was just good. But he retired. Then we have Lance Stroll. He had an engine issue on lap 20. He started 9th on the grid, and his engine expired basically. He didn't do that. He was good. He was driving well for Lance Stroll, but it was a bit of a shame that he retired. Next we've got Kevin Magnussen. He retired on lap 24 with a brakes issue. I mean, his Haas his brakes completely failed on him. I thought he had spun or something, but his brakes had failed him, but he was having a good race. I mean, he was going up the field. He was battling with Antonio Giovinazzi and a few others. He was having a really good race, and his brakes gave up on him. Next we have Romain Grosjean, the exact opposite to his Haas teammate. He also retired from brakes failure. I mean, Haas don't want their cars to retire with brakes failure. It's a complete disaster for Haas, this result. On lap 49 they retired. He was 15th on the grid, Grosjean. He did a good job in qualifying, but he was nowhere in the race. He was even behind George Russell in the Williams, but he was ahead of Nicholas Latifi. But I think Grosjean needs to retire. This is the first driver that I'm going to say that for, and just let the younger generation drive for him. He's starting to be a bit old, and he's not really doing very good. Well, he hasn't been for the past 3 seasons, basically. He was just going backwards in the race, the exact opposite to his teammate Kevin Magnussen, and he just didn't race well. Next we have George Russell. He retired on lap 49, same lap as Grosjean, with fuel pressure issues. He was having a really good race. He was in about 12th, but his fuel pressure just gave up on him, and he out-qualified both the Alfa Romeos. I mean, that was an amazing result for him, but he unfortunately his Williams gave up on him. What a shame. He probably would have scored points in that race had his Williams have not given up on him. I was gutted for him. And next we have Kimi Raikkonen, who retired on lap 3 with a lost wheel. I don't think Alfa Romeo, his team, put his wheel on properly. But again, he had a terrible weekend. He was nowhere all weekend. I mean, he qualified second last. I think this guy needs to retire. Do us a favour and retire. I think he's getting a bit old for F1. I love the guy. He's one of my favourite F1 drivers of all time. But I just think he's had his day, basically. It's very sad for me to say that, but he's had his day. Then we've got Alexander Albon. I mean, he had an electronics issue caused by the clash with Lewis Hamilton. That was a very good race from Albon. I'm gutted for him. I mean, Lewis Hamilton only got a 5-second penalty. I mean, I probably would have either given him a 30-second penalty or disqualified him from that race. I mean, what the hell was Lewis Hamilton doing there? I mean, I'm really disappointed for Alexander Albon, and that was a good race. He started 4th on the grid after Lewis Hamilton's penalty, but that was a very good race, but a bad race for Red Bull then, because they had one car retiring and the other car retiring as well, but what was partly caused by Lewis Hamilton. Then we have Daniel Kvyat. He got a puncture. A very inconsistent driver, in my opinion. He just got a puncture from going over the curbs too much, I think. He qualified 13th. Yeah, he did okay, and he was about where the car should have been. He had an okay weekend. But he technically, him and Albon were classified because they did 90% of race distance, I think it is to be classified. Yeah, but Kvyat, he did okay. Well done, but not. He was battling with Gasly and Ocon and Giovinazzi. He was okay. Then we've got Nicholas Latifi. I'm actually impressed. He did better than what I thought he would, but I'd never heard of Latifi before 2 days ago. But yeah, he's just an average driver. I think he brings a lot of money to Williams. He's got 2 sponsors, one Italian, one Canadian sponsor. I just don't really rate the guy at all, but he did what he needed to do to get noticed a bit. But that's about it really for him. He qualified last by a big margin, and that was all that really happened. Now this is the real surprise. Sebastian Vettel only finished 10th. I mean, that was a disaster for him. His race was a real disaster. I mean, he only qualified 11th, and then he gained 1 position during the race. Although the only reason why he was anywhere is because of all the retirements. That was probably one of the worst races of Sebastian Vettel's career. But he did spin the car. He hit Carlos Sainz and spun the car, so that was a bit of a shame for Sebastian. But he was nowhere. I mean, that wasn't classic Sebastian Vettel. I mean, he was completely rubbish in that race. But I'm disappointed for Vettel and Ferrari after seeing that. Next is Antonio Giovinazzi. Well done, Giovinazzi. You were definitely one of my drivers of the day. I mean, he just kept his nose clean, stayed out of trouble, and he was fast. He was doing a good job for that Alfa Romeo. Probably the second slowest or third slowest, equal with Haas, car in F1 this year. Well done. 9th place. You did one better than last year, in what was probably the 4th or 5th fastest car. But last year you just weren't up to it. This year I believe you're up to the challenge of beating Kimi Raikkonen. But I think you're a bit older. I think Giovinazzi is a bit old for F1. He's not even a young driver. He's 26. I think he should move on to IndyCar next year and join. If Ferrari do join IndyCar, I think they should choose him as their driver. That was a very good performance from Giovinazzi. Next is Esteban Ocon. I mean, what the hell was that, Ocon? I just don't rate Ocon at all. I mean, he qualified 14th. His teammate qualified 10th. But not just that. Ocon was nowhere in that race. The only reason why he's so high up was because of all of the retirements. I just don't rate the guy at all. I think he was just a one-season wanderer in 2017. I think it was when he was racing for Force India. He was crashing too much. He was causing too much trouble in Force India. That's why they dropped him. But his biggest moment was probably in 2018 when he bolted qualifying tyres on and turned his engine onto qualifying mode and smashed into Max Verstappen. I mean, I just don't like the guy at all. I just don't rate him at all. He finished not 8th, which was okay. But he did keep his nose clean, so that is one thing that I have to say well done on. But I just don't rate the guy. I just really don't rate him. And yet on French TV and probably on the English TV as well, they make him sound like a future world champion. I'm sorry, I don't think he's future world champion material. Next is Pierre Gasly. Yeah, he did okay. He qualified 12th and he kept out of trouble, but he was doing okay. He came home in 7th. That wasn't bad. I mean, yeah, not bad, but yeah, he did okay. He just kept his nose clean and picked up 6 points. Next is Checo, also known as Sergio Perez. He qualified 6th and he came home in 6th. That was a good result, but he got 5 seconds added to his race time. He was battling in with the leaders. He did a good job, and yeah, that was okay. He did okay in that race. The Racing Point is a lot more competitive than what it was last year. Next is Carlos Sainz. I mean, that was an average weekend. He qualified 8th and finished 5th. But Lando Norris got a podium. You were pretty average in that weekend. I mean, I rate you higher than I rate Lando Norris before this weekend. But this weekend, Lando Norris has made me change my opinion on Lando Norris. But again, Carlos Sainz, he finished 8 seconds behind Bottas. It was okay, but it wasn't amazing. Next is Lewis Hamilton. I mean, a disaster weekend for him. I probably wouldn't have given him the penalty in qualifying because he was so far ahead after he cut the corner anyway. in qualifying, and it was a bit harsh, the 3-place grid penalty or whatever it was. But the penalty in the race was a farce. I mean, only 5 seconds for taking someone out of the race. I mean, they should have given him at least a 25-30 second penalty, or I probably would have disqualified him after I saw that crash again. I mean, he completely shuts the door on someone who's ahead of him. They were side by side, and Albon was just ahead of Lewis Hamilton, and you shut the door to crash into him like that was reckless driving. Basically, it was like Pastor Maldonado was in the car. I mean, he was equally my worst driver of the day that finished the race alongside Sebastian Vettel. I mean, both of them had disastrous races, really. But yeah, I just didn't rate his performance at all. Next is Lando Norris. I mean, what an amazing drive to get his first podium. Well done, Lando Norris. You got that by 0.2 of a second. I mean, the last lap of Lando Norris was amazing. And he kept his nose clean for the entire race. And he also got the fastest lap of the race on the last lap. That was an amazing last lap of the race. I mean, well done. And also you qualified really, really well. You were my equal driver of the day, probably, alongside Valtteri Bottas and Antonio Giovinazzi. I mean, that was awesome by Lando Norris. He's proved me wrong. He's proved that he is a genuine future world talent. Do I think he's world champion material in the future? Possibly, but first podium, well done. Next is Charles Leclerc. Again, he proved to me that he can drag that Ferrari around, which is, to be honest, it's probably the worst car Ferrari have built, either since 2014, or maybe it's even worse than the 2014 car. I mean, the 1992 car, which was before I was born, because I'm born in 1995, was even worse, but this guy could drag it round to second place. Yeah, granted, there were a lot of retirements, but that was a great race by Charles Leclerc. I mean, great race by Charles Leclerc. Yeah, you're definitely up with my drivers of the day as well. I forgot about you, sorry. So that's 4 I've nominated in my short list. But yeah, that was an amazing race by Charles Leclerc. Very, very, very good race to drag that round. While your teammate was nowhere all weekend, that was an amazing race by Charles Leclerc. Battling at the end for a podium, that was by keeping his nose clean and by being fast at the end. Then we've got, the winner was Valtteri Bottas. Well deserved weekend. He dominated the weekend. He set fastest lap after fastest lap in qualifying, which I've already said, and then he won the race comfortably by 2.7 seconds from Charles Leclerc. That was probably one of the best races I've seen Bottas do. That was an awesome race by Valtteri Bottas, sorry. And he was definitely along with my drivers of the day. So yeah, Valtteri Bottas, well done for that win. So that's all I'm going to say on that. Please like and subscribe. And now I'm going to say thanks, bye.